Oftentimes when a child has ADHD, there are behavioral problems that go along with it. In many instances, those behavioral problems are really part of the ADHD. But it's not uncommon for children who have ADHD to also have another disorder called oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. These are behaviors that can be very, very frustrating to deal with and very irritating. They include children who are disrespectful to their parents, who are argumentative, who are prone to temper tantrums. And we're not just talking about minor behavioral blips. We're talking about major emotional meltdowns that could be extremely disruptive to the entire family. Most children have bad days, but children with ODD have bad days frequently. Sometimes every day, something goes wrong, something sets them off, so that it becomes a major problem for the entire household. Often it's quite common, too, for children with ODD to have a very difficult time accepting responsibility for things that they really are obviously culpable for. In other words, no matter how obvious it might be that your child has done something wrong, he will refuse to accept responsibility and find every other reason in the world to blame, to pin the actual fault to. Now, if you have a child like this can be a very frustrating experience indeed, because you can see that he's lying, you can see that he's distorting reality, but when you confront him about it, he can be quite adamant. And of course, meltdowns can be triggered by something as simple as that. So if you have a child with oppositional defiant disorder, then it makes things a lot more complicated, not just for you in parenting your child, but for everyone else in the household. If you have other children, they are inevitably affected because the child with ODD frequently takes more of the family's time and emotional resources, and it leaves the other children feeling shorted, sometimes resentful. So if you have a child with oppositional defiant disorder, I would urge you to get some consultation, to get some help with it, because typically these children do not respond to the same kinds of incentives that most children do. For example, if all you have is praise and punishment to use with a child, and you have a child with ODD, I'm afraid you're not going to get very far. I've had many children in my office and many parents of children in my office who have ODD, and the alienation is sometimes so thick you can cut it. It's quite common for a parent to tell me, "Dr. Reynolds, we've taken away his Game Boy. We've taken away his computer use. We have grounded him for weeks at a time. We have taken away his use of a bicycle." But nothing seems to change. In fact, sometimes the child doesn't seem like it bothers him at all. So if you have a child like this, and the only thing that you have is punishment, punishment, and more punishment, you're simply not going to get very far. Another significant aspect of children who have ODD is they tend to demonstrate these behaviors almost exclusively at home. There is an occasional child who will demonstrate these behaviors at school as well as at home, but about in 90% of cases, children with ODD really save this behavior for home. And you can understand perhaps why, if they're trying to keep themselves together all day long at school, they don't have a lot of energy left when they get home and they really let loose. But in any event, it can sometimes make parents feel uncomfortable because they realize that these problems are primarily happening at home, and so they wrongfully conclude that it's their fault, that somehow they are inadequate parents, that they're not doing the right job, because if they were, then the child would be better behaved, or if it was something other than their parenting, that the child would misbehave at school and other places. So it really leaves parents with a very serious dilemma. How do we help a child with ODD? How do we reach a child with ODD? Because again, if the typical incentives that we have to motivate children, like praise and punishment, don't work, then we really, really have to solve a serious problem here. And again, no matter what anybody else has told you, my experience has been that children who have ODD typically get worse. These behaviors become more problematic as the child gets older.